Hada was a useless waste of space who could never bag a girl and grew to hate love because Cupid had forgotten he existed. However, he soon became a chick magnet after the most popular girl suddenly confessed to him. Days before he found himself entangled with the school's top baddie, Hada was woken up by his childhood friend, Chua, from an isekai dream where he was about to battle a dragon. When he opened the sliding door, the chibi lolly smiled happily and asked what they were having for dinner. He told her he had to go shopping for ingredients, so she asked if she could come with him and promised not to buy junk food. After they returned from the store, Hada prepared dinner, and after they began eating, Chua noticed Hada was busy reading, so she asked why. He told her he needed to study if he wanted to get into a good public university to study medicine, so she asked why he didn't just apply to a private university instead. Hada explained that even though private universities were easier to get into, he needed a lot of money to pay for the tuition, and unfortunately, he was broke. He said he didn't want to burden his aunt, who had generously taken him and when his good-for-nothing parents abandoned him to be with their new lovers, so Chua dropped the subject. While Hada was doing the dishes later, Chua talked about Masuzu, and against his will Hada learned that Masuzu had been living abroad until recently, and had been asked out every day since she joined their school. Chua said she wanted to become as popular as Masuzu because she believed it would be her ticket to having a hot girl summer. The next morning, Hada woke up and recited his daily mantras. Love is unnecessary, studying comes first, and be careful not to let people think he was as colorful as the rainbow flag. After getting ready for school, he prepared breakfast for his aunt and headed to school with Chua, who was waiting outside his house. Later that day at school, Koru, Hada's friend, told him Chua had been sent to the teacher's office. He said she'd been going around yelling what she referred to as the finishing move. Instant popularity upward glance, hoping it would help in her risen quest. Hada just sighed and shook his head, so Karu changed the topic and asked if his parents had contacted him. Hada told him no and said they could go to hell for all he cared because he didn't consider them to be his parents since they abandoned him to chase after love. The next moment, Masuzu walked into the classroom and everyone's attention went to her except for Hada, who picked up a book instead. During class later, the teacher announced that there would be a seat rearrangement, and to everyone's annoyance, Hada ended up sitting right next to Masuzu. Hada didn't care where he sat, but the jealous look he received from his classmates each day made him want to crawl under a rock. He'd always hoped he could finish school without drawing attention to himself, but sitting beside Masuzu had changed his status from background NPC to public enemy number 1. All the guys wished to be him and hated that he didn't bother to admire Masuzu's beauty as she sat next to him. One particular day, Hada noticed Masuzu stealing glances at him during class, and when classes were over for the day, she surprised him by asking him to walk home with her. Hada couldn't believe the words she'd spoken to him, and since he assumed he was on the latest episode of Punk'd, he asked what she hoped to achieve by extending such an invitation to him. Masuzu told him she would explain everything once they were alone, but Hada insisted that she say it right there for everyone to hear, so she told him she liked him. Everyone in the class, including Hada, was shocked by her admission, so when their classmates began asking questions, Masuzu latched onto his arm and begged him to take her away. Hada did as she asked, and when they were far away from school and the prying eyes of the other students, he asked why she'd told such a bogus lie in front of their classmates. At first, Masuzu insisted that what she said in class was the truth, but after Hada told her to cut the bullshit, she admitted she'd lied and commended him for not getting fooled by her confession. She then moved away from him, and just as she said she would tell him everything he wished to know, a light breeze blew her skirt up. Masuzu quickly pushed her skirt back down, but not before Hada caught a glimpse of what was underneath it. He started stuttering like a fool because he was sure she hadn't worn any underwear, and even though she told him that she did, he kept blabbing about a lot of nonsense. When he finished talking and proving that his head was filled with nothing but sawdust, Masuzu explained why she had confessed to him in front of their classmates. She said she'd been asked out 58 times since she joined their school and was tired of it. So Hada suggested she agreed to date one of her suitors to make the others back off. Masuzu just scoffed and told him that she would never stoop so low as to date anyone because the entire concept of love was something only fools believed in. As she spoke, Masuzu also realized that she had approached him because she wanted him to be her fake boyfriend, so he turned her down. After Masuzu tried and failed to convince him to change his mind, she swore she wouldn't let him slip through her fingers and pulled out the death note from her bag. Okay, it wasn't the death note, but a journal which after she began reading out its contents, Haida realized belonged to him. He demanded to know how she'd gotten her hands on it, so she told him she had bought it in a bookstore close to the train station. Haida didn't believe her, so she explained that it had been hidden inside the animal encyclopedia she had bought. Hearing this made him realize that he had accidentally sold the encyclopedia along with other books he didn't need, so he tried to take it back. Of course, Misuzu didn't let him take it, and she told him that she'd already scanned all the pages. She said if he refused to be her fake boyfriend, she would post everything on the internet, so he agreed to date her to preserve his dignity. As they walked home holding hands, Chua, who had heard from someone at school that Misuzu confessed to Haida, found them. As she screamed at them to stop flaunting their relationship, Misuzu asked Haida who the vertically challenged gnome was. Chua didn't appreciate being referred to that way, so she told Misuzu that she was the perfect height and introduced herself as Haida's childhood friend. She then focused her attention on Haida and demanded to know why he hadn't told her he'd gotten a girlfriend. Haida tried to explain, but Misuzu cut him off and asked if they needed her permission to date. Chua said yes, so Misuzu asked or rather told her that she was dating Haida before walking away with Haida. That evening, Haida met Chua practicing her kendo in her backyard, and she told him she was going to get herself an awesome boyfriend. She also said she would become more popular than Misuzu, so he wished her luck and walked away. The next day at school, while Haida ate his lunch, Kaoru told him that Chua had come to school that morning with a piece of bread hanging from her mouth. He also said she'd been saying Nia at the end of all of her sentences, which made Haida wonder if it was time to book an all-expense-paid vacation for her at Arkham. However, Kaoru believed she was acting out, because Haida now had someone more important than her in his life, so he advised Haida to speak with her. After school, Haida tried to convince Misuzu to let him explain their relationship to Chua, but she refused. She said that once someone else knew about their arrangement, it would no longer be a secret, and she wasn't willing to risk it. As they continued on their way home, Haida told Misuzu about Chua's determination to become popular. This made Misuzu ask him to bring Chua to her after school the next day, which left him feeling like she had something up her sleeve. After school the next day, Haida took Chua to the old tea room to meet Misuzu, and they were both surprised to find her waiting for them in a kimono. When they sat down, Misuzu extended an invitation to them to join her club. She also told Chua that she was aware of her wish to become popular, and said she wanted to help. Misuzu claimed that the only reason she was able to become popular and stay that way for so many years was because of a journal left behind by her first love. As she said this, she pulled out Haida's journal, and when he tried to grab it, Chua pushed him down. She then asked Misuzu how a journal could help, so Misuzu explained that it contained information on how to become attractive to the opposite gender. When Chua asked what happened to her first love, Misuzu made up a story about him going to the store one day and never returning. Chua sympathized with her, but said she didn't need her help to bag a man, so Misuzu told her Haida was part of the club, and just as she expected, Chua agreed to join them. Haida tried to convince the underdeveloped shrimp not to make a deal with his devil girlfriend, but she told him to shut up and said he was only looking for an excuse to be alone with Misuzu, so they could bump lies. After her tongue lashing, they all settled down, and Misuzu explained that she wanted the club to be an avenue for young girls to learn how to become an elegant and chaste Japanese woman. That was why she named it the Club for Young Maidens to Recreate Themselves, or SANEFAG for short. At school the following day, the three met in the club room, and Misuzu told Chua that she needed to pick someone she saw as a potential boyfriend. Chua thought about it for a bit and told her friends that she was willing to make Sakagami, a third-year student, her test subject. Haida thought Sakagami was a good choice, but Misuzu had her doubts about him. However, she changed her mind at the last minute and said he was a good choice, so they all agreed to work on making Sakagami fall for Chua. As their meeting progressed, Haida noticed Chua didn't look excited, so he asked if she was having second thoughts about their plan. Chua assured him that wasn't the case, and Misuzu decided that reading a chapter from Haida's journal would be a good way to motivate Chua. She began reading the entry where Haida wrote about him and his beloved guitar, which left him feeling so embarrassed. When she finished, she said the lesson from the passage she read was that people in bands were cool and popular, most especially those who played the guitar. Misuzu assured Chua that all she had to do was carry the case around, and everyone would believe she was a guitarist. She then coached Chua on what to do and told her that if someone asked who her favorite musician was, she could just use one of the names of the stands that appeared in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 4. However, Chua wasn't an otaku, so she assumed Jojo was the name of a BBQ place, and the moment she said this, Misuzu nearly lost her mind. As she dramatically swayed and hugged Hada, she said the reason Chua wasn't popular was because she didn't watch Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Later that day, just like Misuzu had instructed, Chua came to their classroom with her guitar case, and when their classmates saw her, they gathered around her. They began asking her questions about her favorite music band and artist, and Chua struggled to give them answers since she had forgotten the stand names Misuzu had told her because her brain was low on storage space. When the girls began begging Chua to play a song for them, Sakagami's brother walked up to them and told Chua that his brother had a collection of guitars. Listening to him talk overwhelmed Chua, so when he also requested a song, she swung the guitar case in the air while mumbling something and then struck a pose. Feeling embarrassed, she ran out of the class, and while Hada was worried about her, Misuzu did a poor job containing her laughter. A little while later, Hada and Misuzu found Chua drinking tea in the club room, and Misuzu told Chua that her little display would surely get her noticed. She even gave an example using her relationship with Hada, but since she was the reincarnation of the Wicked Witch of the West, she added a special twist. She said the reason she started dating Hada immediately after confessing to him was because he saw her underwear. Hada tried to convince Chua that he wasn't some cultured rogue and hadn't forced Misuzu into their relationship, but Chua gave him a factory resetting slap. As he knelt before the girls, Misuzu advised Chua to flash Sakagami her underwear to speed up their dating process, but Chua said she had no intention of acting like a roadside call girl. After she said this, she noticed Hada looking at Misuzu and complained about them eye-bonking each other in her presence. Since she had no idea that Hada was looking at Misuzu because she had raised her skirt to tease him, she angrily went to the bathroom. The moment she left, Misuzu told Hada that she had assumed Chua would leave the club after her embarrassing performance in the classroom earlier, but she didn't even look like she was bothered about what had happened. Hada explained that Chua was once an exceptional kendo fighter, but after an accident left her with a damaged lower back, she had to quit the kendo team. He said quitting kendo had been hard for her since it was her ultimate goal, but now she had a new goal: to become popular, and she always worked hard towards her goal. Hearing his words made Misuzu understand why Hada cared for Chua so much, but she told him that as long as they were together, he wasn't allowed to pay attention to other girls. A few days later, during one of their strategy meetings, Misuzu read another entry from Hada's journal. To his horror, it was the one where he talked about his previous life, and hearing all the things he wrote being read out made him embarrassed. In the journal, he claimed he was a prince named Burning Fighting Fighter, who had been reincarnated on Earth after losing a fight against the Wyverns. The more Misuzu read, the more Hada screamed like he was a demon being vanquished. When she finished, Misuzu advised Chua to fight someone from her past life, but Chua said she couldn't remember it. However, after she thought about it for a while, she said she was a princess in her past life and was adored by her subjects. The other thing she remembered from her so-called past life was that a prince riding a cow had proposed to her. The prince had promised to give her all his meat if she said yes and no. "You degenerate, it's not that type of meat." Hearing all the shit coming out of Chua's mouth annoyed Hada so much that he screamed at her to stop underestimating her past life. He said it would make more sense if she said she had been a princess knight who battled evil gods or did something dangerous and heroic. Instead, she was deluding herself into believing she had been living in a Disney fairy tale with a dashing prince. When he finished his rant, both girls stared at him with their eyes wide open, making him realize that he looked like a crazy person. Fortunately, Misuzu backed him and told Chua that drama was necessary when it came to past lives, so Chua asked who she had to fight. Misuzu explained that all she had to do was play pretend and promised to write out a script for her to follow. Later that day, just like the Zack Cinder wannabe otherwise known as Misuzu had directed, Chua burst into Hada's class and began acting. She was supposedly a hero who had just regained her memories and powers from her past life. Hada also starred in the play and helped her make the scene more believable, or so they thought. Once their performance was over, Chua rushed out of the classroom with a dramatic flair, and to Misuzu and Hada's surprise, their classmates began clapping. They soon surrounded Hada, commended him for his performance, and asked if the short scene was a teaser from the comedy skit he wished to perform on SNL that weekend. Hada was left speechless by their assumption, but Misuzu was completely crushed when she heard them call the script she poured her heart into a comedy skit. Later during their club meeting, Misuzu announced that it was time for Chua to ask Sakagami out on a date. Hada thought it was too soon, but she insisted that Chua's previous attempts to raise her status must have caught Sakagami's attention already. Still, Heda argued that a few skits weren't enough to make Sakagami fall for Chua, so Misuzu proposed they come up with another plan. However, Chua cut them off and said she was ready to shoot her shot by asking Sakagami out on a date. After she said this, Misuzu pointed out that she didn't sound as enthusiastic as she ought to be, but she denied it. Misuzu didn't bother arguing with her and suggested that she put a love letter in Sakagami's locker. That night, while Heda and Chua were grocery shopping, Heda asked Chua if she was sure about her decision to ask Sakagami out. Chua said yes, so he promised to celebrate her success by cooking all of her favorite food. The next day, Chua placed the letter in Sakagami's locker as planned after school. He met her on the rooftop. Heda and Misuzu were also on there, watching them from another part of the roof with bated breath. After Sakagami approached Chua, he surprised her by saying he thought she was cute and invited her to see a movie with him that Sunday. That night, Heda kept to his word and prepared all of Chua's favorite food to celebrate her success with Sakagami. When Chua saw the food laid out on the table, she asked Heda why they were celebrating. He began listing out all the positive things that would come with her dating Sakagami, so she asked if he was okay with her dating Sakagami. Heda was confused by her question because the only reason Misuzu had started the club in the first place was to help Chua achieve her goal. He reminded her that all the work she put in to get Sakagami had finally paid off, but Chua surprised him when she began crying and saying it hadn't. She also said she wished she hadn't met or befriended him because she had never gained anything from their relationship. Heda tried to calm her down, but Chua slapped his hand away when he tried to give her a handkerchief and ran out of the house. Alone in the house, Heda recalled the time Chua got into an accident that changed her life forever. After she returned from the hospital, she came to see him, and that was when she told him she could never do kendo again. He had been angry because he believed the doctors hadn't done their best to help Chua, but Chua assured him that wasn't the case. She asked if he planned to move away since she learned his parents had decided to play hooky and ditch him for life. Heda realized she was asking because she was scared of losing him, so he assured her that he was going nowhere. He prepared dinner for them to make her feel better, but since he wasn't Gordon Ramsay, the meal wasn't that great. However, he promised to learn how to cook so Chua would eat healthy, and she promised to find a new hobby to replace kendo. Her determination made him think of what he wanted to do with his life. Eventually, he decided he would study hard to become a doctor and told Chua he would heal her. This made Chua cry, but he promised that he wouldn't let her down, and she told him she would wait until he could heal her. In the present, Heda looked at their untouched dinner and called himself a fool for making such a promise. That Sunday, Heda woke up late but managed to get to the front of the station after gathering his books. As soon as he arrived, he was surprised to see Misuzu, who admitted she had also to see how Chua's date went. They found a spot and stood there watching Chua as she waited for Sakagami to show up for their date. When Heda complimented Chua's outfit, Misuzu bragged that she had been the one to pick out Chua's clothes. Heda commended her for doing something nice. However, he retracted his praise the next moment because Misuzu revealed that they were her old clothes. The meaning behind her words was clear. Chua was built like a surfboard. As time passed, Sakagami was a no-show, and he didn't even have the courtesy to inform her that he'd be late. 2 hours later, Heda was already pissed and prayed Chua would return home, but Sakagami showed up at that moment. However, he wasn't alone as he had come with his friends, who joined him to mock Chua for foolishly waiting for him. It was then revealed that Sakagami had asked Chua out as a joke because his friends had made a bet to see how long she would wait for him. As they mocked and belittled poor Chua, Misuzu explained to Heda that Sakagami had a reputation for being a two-timing dirtbag. She said he was a wolf in sheep's clothing and had no regard for the feelings of those he hurt. Heda was livid after hearing what she said and tried to go help Chua, but Misuzu stopped him. She said she wanted Chua to understand that love was a pointless thing. But when Heda remembered how sad and dejected Chua looked the day she told him she couldn't do kendo again, he snapped. He accused Misuzu of being a cold-hearted witch, but Misuzu wasn't offended. She admitted that all the words of encouragement she'd given to Chua were all lies because she already knew how things would turn out. Heda told her to stop trying to make others as miserable as her because it was wrong and they didn't deserve it. He then turned to leave again, but Misuzu stopped him again. But this time around it was because she didn't want him to leave her alone. Heda just smiled and flicked her forehead playfully before telling her to watch him pull off his heroic act. Since he'd already gaslighted himself into believing he was a knight, he charged at Sakagami and his friends. The group moved out of the way easily and demanded to know what he wanted. Heda began rambling and acting like an idiot as he introduced himself as the burning fighting fighter, causing Sakagami and his friends to conclude that he was a deranged kaku. They decided it was best to leave before they got infected by his stupidity. But Heda ran after them and knocked Sakagami down. He demanded that they apologize to Chiwa, but his actions had pissed Sakagami off, so they began kicking him. Still, Heda refused to back down and kept insisting they apologize to Chiwa, who begged them to leave Heda alone. When she called them a bunch of low-life creeps, one of Sakagami's friends turned to face her. Just as Heda screamed for Chiwa to get away, someone threw a pole in Chiwa's direction, so she picked it up and beat the shit out of Sakagami and his friends. Sakagami was the last to take a beating, and when Chiwa finished, she apologized for lying to him. She said she had only approached him because she got into a fight with Heda and wanted to prove she could get a boyfriend just as she had said. Sakagami accepted her apology, and before leaving with his friends, he told Chiwa he never wanted to see her or Heda again. She then approached Heda to see if he was okay after the beating. The next day at school, Kaoru informed Heda that he was a legend among their classmates, since everyone had heard what transpired between him and Sakagami's group. He also pointed out that his heroic acts may have made Misuzu mad since she didn't show up to school that day. Heda didn't think that was the case, but Kaoru insisted that no girl would be happy if their boyfriend ditched them to go save another girl. That was why Heda headed to Misuzu's house after school, but he never made it because Misuzu suddenly hugged him from behind. As they began walking, he asked what she planned to do with their club, since her plan to turn Chiwa into an anti-love advocate had failed. Misuzu said she would keep running the club because she believed she could get Chiwa to change her mind. Heda then told her he would remain in the club until Chiwa achieved her goal, so Misuzu turned around and kissed him. After the kiss, she told him never to forget that she was his first kiss, and Heda asked why she had kissed him when she didn't even like him. Misuzu revealed she had only kissed him to reenact the scene where Dio stole a kiss from Arina in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, Part 1. She then told him to complete the scene by washing his mouth with dirty water, but Heda refused. A few days later, Heda walked in on Chiwa in his bathroom, and after they both freaked out, he rushed outside to give her some privacy. As he stood outside, he asked why she was in his house, and she explained that she had sent him an email the night before to inform him that she would use his bathroom because hers was bad. Since Heda hadn't checked his email, he was unaware of this, so he apologized for barging in on her. Chiwa told him that if he wanted to make it up to her, he had to walk to school with her every morning, and he agreed. After leaving the bathroom, Heda went to the kitchen and was surprised to see Misuzu. She told him she had emailed him the previous night to tell him she was coming over in the morning. While they were still talking, Chiwa called out to him asking for the hairdryer. Misuzu asked Heda who else was home after hearing Chiwa's voice, and he told her it was his aunt. Misuzu insisted on saying hello, but he didn't let her and instructed her to stay in the kitchen while he rushed to the bathroom. Inside the bathroom, Heda handed Chiwa the hairdryer, and when Misuzu called out to him from the kitchen, she assumed it was his aunt and tried to go greet her. Heda insisted that she say hello another time and then rushed out to see what Misuzu needed. He kept going back and forth between the kitchen and bathroom, trying desperately to keep both girls apart, but in the end they saw one another and got into a heated staring contest. When Heda got to school later that morning, he found a love letter in his locker, so he told Kaoru about it. Kaoru speculated that Chiwa was the one who placed the letter in his locker, because the sender had said she wanted things between her and Heda to go back to the way they were in the past. He said she might be feeling left out since he spent most of his time with Misuzu, so Heda decided to ask Chiwa about it. Later that day in the club room, Heda wondered how to bring up the question as Chiwa ate beside him. Eventually, Chiwa broke the silence by asking where Misuzu was, and Heda told her that she had something to do. This made Chiwa happy as it was the first time in a long time that she and Heda were alone in a room, so she moved closer to him and rested her head on his shoulder. She claimed she was practicing for when she got a boyfriend, but Misuzu arrived at that moment and slammed her face into her food. When she finally let go of Chiwa, Chiwa accused her of trying to send her into the afterlife, but Misuzu stated that she was only protecting her territory. Chiwa argued that she hadn't been trying to steal Heda, but Misuzu didn't buy her story and complained about how she was always on her toes because of Chiwa and the hall monitors. Chiwa agreed that the hall monitors were a pain in the ass, so Misuzu told them that their next mission was to take down the hall monitors. Heda advised the Ethan Hunt in training to abort the mission as it was doomed to fail, so Chua suggested they get new members to prevent the club from getting shut down. For the first time, Misuzu agreed with Chua and said the first thing they had to do to attract new members was to create a theme song. She then gave Chua the chance to perform the song she came up with, but after listening to her sing for a few seconds, she told her to keep quiet. Chua whined that she hadn't gotten to the best part yet, but Misuzu said she didn't want a song about love as they were all lies. The next moment, she pulled out Heida's journal and began reading out a poem called This Rotten World, which she claimed was a masterpiece. After school, Heida found another letter in his locker, and while he was reading it, Misuzu approached him, so he quickly hid it in his pocket. However, Misuzu noticed this, so when they stopped by the park on their way home, she asked what he was hiding from her. Heida said it was nothing, but she didn't believe him and tried to force him to speak by threatening to read his journal in front of the entire school. Heida didn't want that, but he also knew that telling her about the letters was a bad idea, so he insisted that nothing was going on. The next moment, they were interrupted by a blonde girl, who said Heida looked like a disgusting reject. Judging by the annoyed look Misuzu wore as she stared at the girl, Heida deduced that they knew one another, but when he asked Misuzu who the girl was, she ignored him. Instead, she focused on the girl and asked why she had come. So the girl told her she had come because she wanted to meet her boyfriend. She admitted she had been sent by someone who didn't like the fact that Misuzu had a boyfriend, since it wasn't the reason she was sent to Japan. However, she promised to speak to the person on Misuzu's behalf if she gave Heida to her. Before Misuzu or Heida could react, the girl kissed Heida on the lips and then announced that she had enjoyed it. Her bodyguard soon called out to her, so she walked over to the limo and before getting in, introduced herself as Mana, Misuzu's younger sister. When the limo pulled away, Heida tried to find out who Mana had been referring to, but Misuzu snapped at him and told him to stop being nosy. At school the next day, Misuzu didn't speak to Heida, so during her swimming class, he approached her and tried to strike up a conversation with her. He asked if she was going to swim, and she told him she didn't like getting wet, so he tried to keep the conversation going by talking about how some JoJo characters could walk on water. Just then, two girls walked past them, and when Misuzu heard them say she was trying to get attention by not getting in the pool, she told Heida she wanted to swim. However, soon after she got in the water, she started drowning, so Heida jumped into the pool to save her. When he discovered she wasn't breathing, he tried to call their teacher for help, but the man was attending to another student, so he decided to perform CPR himself. Later, Misuzu awoke in the nurse's office to find Heida sitting by her bedside, so she took the chance to apologize for the way she'd been acting the entire day. She admitted that she acted that way because she didn't like that Mana had kissed him, which surprised Heida. After all, he assumed she was mad at him because he had been asking her questions. He then told her not to worry as he had already overwritten Mana's kiss by giving her mouth-to-mouth at the pool, but that just made Misuzu blush, so she tried to hide her face under the blanket. The next day, Chua's mother asked Heida to look after her because she was going to work and Chua was down with a cold. Heida went over to Chua's house to take care of her, and after helping her wipe down her body, he decided to look around the room. When he noticed the chopsticks she kept on her table, he asked if it was the same one she used on the night she returned from the hospital, and she said yes. She apologized for taking it without telling him but said she took it because it represented her most cherished memories with him. This made Heida realize that Chua wasn't the one sending him letters because there was nothing wrong with their relationship. The following week, when Heida arrived at school with Chua, they ran into Misuzu by the lockers, and both girls began their usual playful banter. Heida ignored the two as he opened his locker, but he quickly shut it again when he found another letter waiting for him. The sound of the locker slamming caught the attention of the girls, but when they asked him about it, he swore nothing was going on. In the new letter, the sender asked him to meet her on the roof after school, so Heida went there and was surprised to see a girl he'd never met before. Heida asked what connection she had been referring to in her letter, so the girl explained that her name was Himeka, but in her former life, she went by the name Burning Princess. She said that in her former life, a knight named Burning Fighting Fighter was her lover, and since that was Heida's name in his previous life, he had to be the one. When she suddenly hugged him, Heida tried to push her off him as he asked how she knew he was the Burning Fighting Fighter. Himeka responded by saying she had been at the station the day he fought with Sakagami and his crew, and when she saw him standing up to them, her memories were unlocked. Heida was just about to tell her that none of what he said that day was real, but before he could do so, the door suddenly opened to reveal Misuzu and Chua, who were not happy to see him in Himeka's embrace. When they demanded to know who Himeka was, Hada told Himeka not to mention anything about their past lives. But this slow-brained girl only made things worse by saying she was his ex. Chua couldn't believe Hada had dated someone in the past without her knowledge, and Misuzu wrote something down in her notebook for later. When Himeka asked who they were, they introduced themselves as his childhood friend and current girlfriend respectively. But Himeka didn't like that Hada had a girlfriend, so she began throwing a tantrum. During lunch the next day, Hada walked into the club room and was shocked to see Himeka drinking tea with Misuzu. When Himeka saw him, she went to hug him and explained that Misuzu had invited her to have tea with her so they could talk. When he confronted Misuzu about her plans, she let him know that Himeka had told her about their connection in their past lives. She said she wanted Himeka to join their club, but at that moment, Chua rushed in and made it known that she didn't want Himeka to join the club. When they asked why she was against the idea, she said the only thing Himeka wanted was to be close to Hada, as she was obsessed with him. She then asked Himeka if she was interested in gaining popularity, and Himeka told her that all she cared about was Hada, proving what Chua said earlier. Misuzu told Himeka that it was wrong of her not to care about anyone besides Hada, and tried to make her understand why by reading a passage from the journal. This one was called "My Four Guardian Be My Angels," and as she read it out, Hada did his best not to die from embarrassment and shame. When she was done reading it, she gave Himeka a notebook, and told her that if she wished to join their club, she had to write a poem explaining the type of maiden she wished to become. Chua objected by saying Himeka also had to do a practical test, so they went to the hallway to act out the famous toast in the mouth scene without the toast. Unfortunately, Himeka fainted just as the hall monitors arrived to take Misuzu and Chua to the disciplinary committee for using the hallway as a stage. When Himeka woke up later, Hada asked why she cared about him so much, and she explained that before she saw him at the station she saw life as black and white. Nothing interested her, but seeing how Hada defended Chua made her realize that there was more to life. Hada said that he no longer saw himself as the burning fighting fighter, as it was a stupid fantasy he once had, but she told him to believe in himself. A few days later, Hada and the girls were tasked with cleaning the pool as punishment for what happened the other day. While they cleaned, Mana's limo pulled into the school, and when they went out to speak with the evil minion, she informed Misuzu that their father wanted her to return home. Misuzu tried to refuse, but Mana advised her not to do so because things would get ugly if their father came to get her himself. Hearing this, Misuzu agreed to return, but before she went to change her clothes, she told Hada that they were no longer dating. Chua didn't like that Misuzu was giving up without a fight, so she followed her to try and talk some sense into her. The moment they left, Himeka arrived, and she told Hada that she was finished with the poem Misuzu had requested. While she was speaking, Mana snatched the notebook from her and began reading its contents. Hada tried to get it back, but her bodyguard prevented him from doing so, and as she read Himeka's poem she laughed. She mocked Himeka for the things she wrote down, which pissed Hada off, so he approached her again. However, since her bodyguard prevented him from doing so, he settled for scolding her and telling her that she had no right to make fun of people's fantasies. Just as he demanded that she apologize to Himeka, Misuzu and Chua returned, and Misuzu told Mana to leave her friends alone. Hada then helped Himeka up as he told her not to be ashamed of herself or even bother listening to what half-witted dummies like Mana had to say. Annoyed that he insulted her, Mana instructed her bodyguard to hurt Hada, but Himeka got in the way and screamed at him. She asked Mana to leave, stating that she would not allow her to ruin the happiness she found with Hada, Chua, and Mana. Everyone was surprised by her outburst, but they were ready to defend her, and when they asked Misuzu what her final decision was, she said she would stay. Mana said she couldn't do that, but Misuzu told Mana to return home and made her apologize to her friends before she left. Later on, Himeka presented Misuzu with a formal letter, requesting to join the club, and she accepted her request. A few days later, Hada heard his name being called, so he opened his eyes and the first thing he saw was a pair of half-covered plots. Realizing they belonged to Himeka, he immediately jumped out of bed and asked why she was lying next to him in her birthday suit. The airheaded girl told him it was her first time, indirectly hinting at cherries being popped. However, since Hada wasn't as cultured as you lot, and would never dream of making plot in the nurse's office, he told her to be serious. This made Himeka hug him and say that declaring her love for him wasn't wrong. But Hada wasn't interested in anything she was saying. This was because Misuzu and Chua were banging on the door, asking him to open it. He knew the moment they found a way and they would turn him into an unwilling eunuch, so he begged Himeka to put some clothes on. Himika told him not to be afraid, and after spewing a lot of hot garbage about getting rid of them, using her holy aura and whatnot, she went to open the door before Haida could stop her. When Masuzu and Chua stepped into the room, they were surprised to see that Himika was alone, and when they asked where Haida was, she told them she had no idea. Masuzu didn't believe her and pointed out that she'd heard his voice, but Himika assured her that she was only hearing things. Masuzu then asked why she wasn't wearing any clothes, and just like she'd told Haida before, Himika said it was her first time. Both girls asked what she meant by that, and she claimed it was a challenge from the underworld, and since they didn't want to tell her that she sounded like a crazy nutjob, they agreed with her. However, Masuzu wasn't convinced that Haida wasn't in the room, so she decided to check the room out herself. She would have caught him hiding behind the curtain like a scared little girl if Himika didn't start acting like she'd lost a few more screws in her head and eye. One of the hall monitors, who hated Masuzu's guts, hadn't walked in. I scolded them for fooling around in the nurse's office and told them to be ashamed of themselves for turning Himika into a delusional fool. She also reminded them that their club would be shut down, and Chua said that she was trying to shut down their club because she was jealous of them. She told A to admit that she wanted to join their club to increase her chances of getting a boyfriend, but I screamed at her and said she already had a boyfriend. Her outburst shocked everyone, including herself, but since he didn't want to be known as the boy who cried wolf, or in her case, girl, she kept her composure. Masuzu then asked if her boyfriend went to their school, and she told them he was a college student because she liked her men mature. Instead of stopping there, the Pinocchio wannabe decided to brag about her so-called perfect boyfriend. So Masuzu asked what his name was. I said his name was Michael, a name which she came up with on the spot, but since the girls didn't know that, they believed her. Eventually, the club was shut down, and since it was the start of the school break, Haida felt relieved. This was because he could focus on his prep classes without worrying about what harebrained scheme Masuzu would cook up in the name of club activity. When he got to the venue, he was surprised to see Ai, who asked what class he was in after getting over her shock at seeing him. Haida told her he was in Class C, which happened to be the same class she was in. For some reason, finding out they were in the same class made her very happy, and she let out a delighted squeal as she did a fist pump in the air. Her actions drew the attention of others to them, so she decided to play it cool and left him alone. As soon as she walked away, Kaoru approached Haida and asked Haida why he'd been talking to Ai. How Kaoru referred to Ai made Haida ask if he was close to her, so Kaoru explained that they went to the same elementary school. That evening, while Haida and Chua had dinner, Chua invited Haida to go to the upcoming river festival with her. Haida turned her down, saying he wanted to focus all his energy on his classes. Later that night, Haida was in his room studying when he received a message from Masuzu. In her message, she threatened to share the contents of his journal with everyone she knew if he didn't go see her immediately. Even though Haida groaned about how the cold-hearted witch was manipulating him, he rushed to the cafe where she asked him to meet her. When he got there, Masuzu pointed out that he was late, and he told her it wasn't his fault. Still, she decided to insult him and said if he had a functioning brain, he'd have traveled through dark space. Haida had to remind her that he wasn't a stand user, and asked why she was being extra bitchy that evening. She told him it was because she'd made up her mind to treat him like the worthless low-life scum that he was, since there was no need to pretend they were dating whenever they were alone. Haida wasn't offended by her rudeness, and asked why she wanted to meet with him that night instead of the next day. Masuzu then told him she needed him to learn A's weaknesses since they were taking the same classes. She said she'd asked around and no one had ever heard of A's supposed boyfriend before, so she needed proof to help her show everyone that I was a liar. Haida asked why she couldn't ignore Ai, and she told him that finding Ai's weakness and exploiting it was the only way to restore their club. During lunchtime the next day, Kaoru kept talking to Haida about Ai, so Haida asked if he had a crush on her. To his surprise, Kaoru got annoyed and told Haida never to say such absurd things, which left Haida confused. Suddenly, Kaoru rushed away from their table, and when he returned, he had Ai with him. He asked A to say hello to Haida, but the rude brat called Haida a stupid idiot instead, so Kaori whispered in her ear and told her he wouldn't help her anymore. This was enough for her to change her attitude, so she apologized and brought out her bento. She then opened it and asked Haida to have some of it, but he refused, saying it wasn't enough. Kaoru told him not to refuse her offer and assured him that if I felt hungry later, he would give her a jam roll, so Haida took one of the egg rolls. After eating it, he commented on how good it tasted, which made Ai blush before she announced that she was going for a run. After she ran out of the cafeteria, Kaoru explained to Hada his compliment had made Ai happy. Later that day, when classes were over, Kaoru asked Hada if he and I could join in for dinner, and he said yes. At the restaurant, while they waited for their food, I went to say something about her boyfriend, but Chua suddenly showed up. Hada asked why she was there, and she explained that she'd seen him from the window while she was going to the steakhouse with her parents. She then turned her attention to Ai and asked if she was ready to confess that she had lied about having a boyfriend. Before I could respond, Hada came to her defense and told Chua to stop picking on her because she was telling the truth. Chua argued that I was a bigger liar than Usopp, but Hada insisted she was wrong, and when he asked Ai about it, she confirmed it, saying she had a boyfriend. Just as she told them she had dates planned out with him, Himeka, who suddenly appeared behind Hada, begged her to tell them about her previous dates. Since she didn't want to be called a liar, I told them about her dates, the clothes she wore to the dates, and the things they did together, which Hada and the girls believed to be true. The next day, Hada met with Misuzu, and he told her that Ai's boyfriend was real because of what she said to him and the others the day before. However, Misuzu refused to believe Ai had a boyfriend and said she wanted to meet with him, but Hada told her to give it a rest. Misuzu said that she found it hard to believe in people because she had lived all her life as a fake. Hada insisted that she have a little more faith in herself and those around her, so she kissed him on the cheek. When he asked why she'd done so, she said it was a reward for his kind words and told him to continue investigating Ai. A few days later, Hada ran into Kaoru and Ai on his way home, so he decided to chat with them. Kaoru showed him the flyer for the upcoming festival, and Ai nervously asked if he would go to watch the fireworks with either Misuzu, Chua, or Himeka. Hada told her no, so she asked who he was attending the festival with, and he said he wasn't attending the festival, which shocked her. She asked why he wasn't going, and he explained that he wanted to spend the night studying, so she insisted that he attend the festival. When she began to sound desperate, Kaoru saved her from embarrassing herself further by placing 3 movie tickets on the table. He suggested that they go watch the movie together the next day since they didn't have classes, and Hada agreed. Soon after Hada leaves Kaoru and Ai, he meets up with Misuzu and the others to tell them about the movie hangout, and Misuzu says it is their chance to discover Ai's weaknesses. Hada, despite knowing that Misuzu's plans were never as simple as she made them out to be, still asked if his mission was to observe Ai during the movie. Misuzu explained to her pea-brained boyfriend that his mission was to make Ai fall hopelessly in love with him. She said he had to do it in a way that didn't make him look like a cheating bastard, but Hada refused. He pointed out that Ai had a boyfriend, but Misuzu told him that once he tapped into the Rise Force, Ai wouldn't be able to resist him. She hoped to expose Ai as a cheater once she was sure she had feelings for Hada. Hada tried to reason with her, so Misuzu did what she always did whenever she wanted him to go along with her plan: read a passage from his journal. After she finished reading it, she instructed Chua to accompany Hada on the mission. She said while they were on the date, she and Himeka would be close by taking pictures to help prove Ai's unfaithfulness. As soon as she said this, Himeka opted out of the mission, stating that Ai was her love master and she didn't want to betray her. The next day, Hada met Ai and Kaoru outside the station, and when I tried to talk to him, Chua suddenly swung her kendo stick between them. Hada scolded her for being reckless, and when Kaoru asked what she was doing there, she told him she wanted to join them to go see the movie. Kaoru had no problem with it, so he agreed to let her tag along with them since she offered to buy her ticket. On their way to the cinema, I asked what he thought of her outfit, and he told her that it was cute, which made her blush so hard that her entire face was as red as a fire truck. As if that wasn't enough, she started freaking out and tried to run around, but Hada held her hands to stop her. Seeing his hand in hers made her want to ask a question, but Chua interrupted them again with her kendo stick. At the cinema, right before the movie began, Misuzu called to remind Hada of his mission, and he told her he was aware. When the movie started, I grabbed Hada's hand because she was scared. A jealous Chua noticed this, so she grabbed Hada's other hand and almost broke his fingers because her grip was as strong as that of a gorilla. During the movie, Chua and I realized that they could relate to 2 of the characters. I was the first to react as she stood up cheering for the character that represented her to fight for the main lead. Chua soon followed suit, and before Hada realized what was happening, he was being pulled between the 2 girls. Misuzu refused to be left out, so she got up and shouted at Hada to prove he was a real man. Meanwhile, Ai and Chua continued their unofficial battle, but Chua backed down when she noticed Ai start to tear up. Hada noticed it as well, so after the movie he asked Ai if she was alright, and she assured him that she was. The following week, Heda was packing up his belongings after classes when he spotted a notebook that someone left behind. He then picked it up and flipped it open to find out who it belonged to. The first page that opened up happened to have the words "I love Taken" written on it over and over again. Heda quickly closed the book because it felt like he was invading someone's privacy. Just as he was about to put it back, I rushed into the room and tried to take the book from him, but in her haste, she dropped the book and caused the contents of his bag to spill. She threw out an apology as she grabbed the book and fled, but it wasn't until Heda picked up the things that he realized she had taken the wrong book. Since Heda was a nosy fellow, he flipped the book open again and began going through it. The poems written in it reminded him of the things he'd written in his journal, making him realize he wasn't the only delusional nutcase roaming the earth. Meanwhile, I had just discovered that she had taken the wrong note, so she ran back to the classroom, hoping that Heda hadn't read her notebook. Upon entering the classroom, she found him reading the book and Heda screamed her name out loud because she startled him. However, she was too embarrassed to look him in the eye, so she began chasing him, hoping she could take the notebook back. For some reason, Heda took off running down the hallway as he screamed that he hadn't read the book. I eventually tackled him in the stairwell, but she was so embarrassed that she begged the Grim Reaper to come take her. She began to cry and told Heda he was free to laugh at her, but seeing her tears made him feel like a jerk. He then decided to make her feel better by making himself look like a fool and revealing his alter ego, Burning Fighting Fighter. As I watched him showcase his stupidity, she laughed but told him that having delusions was uncool. However, she got up and hugged him, which surprised him, but he didn't push her away. When she finally felt better, she pulled away and asked him to return her notebook, which he did. I'd pointed out that it was all scrunched up because he'd gripped it tightly, so he offered to buy her a new one. I told him that buying a new one wouldn't make up for his actions, so he asked what he had to do to make her forgive him. Later that night, Chua asked Heda if he would like to go watch the fireworks display with her and Himika on the night of the festival. Heda told her no, reminding her of the plans he had, so she angrily said she'd go along with Himika. On the day of the festival, Heda met I in front of their school, but he wore a cap to hide his face. I teased him for dressing up like one of those cliché bad guys in Korean movies, but he told her it was necessary. As they walked, Heda recognized the area, but every memory he had of the place was with Chua, which made I sad. They soon came to a path that led to an old cider tree, which Heda remembered from his childhood, so he grabbed A's hand and rushed to the tree. As they watched the fireworks display, I referred to Heda as Taken and said it was the name she used to call him back in kindergarten. Suddenly, Heda's mind was flooded with a rush of memories from kindergarten, and he realized I was his close friend Achan. I was glad he finally remembered her and explained that Koru had been trying to get him to remember her. She said that she had been sad when she moved away, but when she transferred schools recently and saw him, she was beyond happy. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to reconnect with him because every time she saw him, he was with Chua. Things only got worse when he started dating Misuzu and Himika joined their club, so she never got the chance to speak to him. Heda apologized, but she told him it was all water under the bridge, after which she pulled out a piece of paper from her purse. When she gave it to Heda, he unfolded it and was surprised to see a marriage form with both their names on it. From the way it was written, it was obvious they had made it in kindergarten, but I had held on to it. She told Heda that he had to sign it to fulfill his promise to marry her, but he refused. He reminded her that she was in a relationship, but she admitted that she lied about it, so he told her that she needed to come clean. I said she wouldn't do that because it was embarrassing and tried to make him sign the marriage form again. However, Heda stood his ground and ran off, but before he got home, he ran into Chua and Himika. Both girls were happy to see him, and even though he told them he was returning home, they dragged him along with them to the festival. The next day, Misuzu texted Heda to meet her at the school, and when he got there, she accused him of cheating. She said that if he wanted her to forgive him for attending the festival with I, he had to kiss her. To let peace reign, Heda kissed her on the cheek, which scrambled her brain momentarily. When school finally resumed a few weeks later, I informed the SA and EFAG club members that she would allow their club to operate again. However, she said the only condition was that they let her join the club as a chaperone and coach. Chu objected, but the others didn't mind, and I told Heda that she would make him sign the marriage papers one day. The first thing I did as their coach was call a meeting to discuss how the club would function going forward. During the meeting, Chua clashed with I, but Himika begged her to stop attacking her master. I liked that Himika was on her side, so when Himika asked her to pet her head as a reward, she did it happily. Tired of watching them, Misuzu spoke up and said she liked the idea of A being their coach since she was the only one among them who had been in a relationship for a long time. I was visibly nervous after hearing Misuzu's statement, but in her usual manner, she acted nonchalantly to avoid getting caught in her life. Chua and Himeka then begged her to teach them the best way to confess to a guy, and I told them that girls weren't meant to chase guys. She said it was a guy's duty to woo a girl, so Misuzu asked her to give them a demonstration using Hada. Even though I was thrilled with the idea, she pretended to be annoyed and secretly adjusted her hair before agreeing to do it. When they began, Hada didn't bother putting any energy into his acting, and I turned him down. However, she refused to let him back down, stating that a guy must keep pushing even though the girl turned him down. To make Hada put in more effort, Misuzu threatened to tell the others that the journal belonged to him. Fearing that his secret would be exposed, he immediately put in more effort, and it worked like a charm. The girls were surprised to see I acting like a love-struck fool for Hada, but she quickly masked her joy and swore that she was only acting. However, Misuzu didn't believe her, so she insisted they act out the scene again, and just like before, she fell for him. As she clung to him declaring her love, a pissed-off Chua pulled them apart. She then told Ai that if she wanted to get closer to Hada, she needed her permission since she was his childhood friend. I argued that she could do whatever she wanted because she was also Hada's childhood friend. She said that she had met Hada a year before Chua came into the picture, so she had more rights over him. This revelation stunned Chua into silence, and when she recovered, she asked Hada if what I said was true. Hada confirmed it, and before he could say anything else, Himeka spoke up and said she had known Hada the longest since she was his lover in their past life. Hearing this made I start asking questions, but Misuzu cut in and suggested they make plans for the longer summer vacation. Hada said he couldn't participate in whatever they decided to do as he had summer classes to attend, but the girls told him not to be a nerd. I then suggested they go hiking, and Himeka suggested going to the beach since she'd never gone before. In the end, they agreed to visit the beach because of Himeka, and while the others made plans to go shopping for swimsuits, Chua excused herself. She went to the bathroom and stared at herself in the mirror as she tried to fake a smile. When she eventually came out of the bathroom, Hada was waiting for her, and he let her know that even though he met Ai first, she was the one he had known the longest. Hearing him say those words made her so happy that she hugged him. She then invited him to go swimsuit shopping with her the next day and said he could buy some books at the mall, so he agreed. Later that day, he informed Misuzu about his planned outing with Chua because he didn't want to be accused of being a shameless rake. After Misuzu told him she had no problem with him going out with Chua, Hada asked why she had agreed to visit the beach when she couldn't swim. Misuzu told him it was because Himeka wanted to go, and he complimented her for being a nice person. The next day, Hada met Chua in front of the station, and just as they were about to begin their date, Misuzu showed up. Hada and Chua were surprised to see her, and as expected, both girls began arguing until Hada begged them to stop. However, they had no idea Himeka was watching them from afar while I angrily punched the wall in anger. Inside the swimsuit shop, Misuzu and Chua got into another argument. This time around it was about whose swimsuit Hada picked out first. Hada tried to settle the issue by suggesting a game of rock, paper, scissors, but that also ended in another fight. The only solution was to convince both girls to try on the swimsuits and show them to him at the same time. As soon as they stepped into the dressing room, Hada was pulled into another dressing room by Himeka. He was surprised to see her and even more surprised when he felt her firm melons pressing into his chest when she hugged him. He managed to get her to let go of him and told her that the swimsuit looked good on her. Himeka thanked him and began undressing, so Hada rushed out of the dressing room to avoid getting flashed. Outside the dressing room, he tried to catch his breath, but I accosted him and began calling him all sorts of names. To get her to stop talking, he promised to help her pick a swimsuit, which made her happy. However, she dragged him to a wedding dress shop, so when Chua and Misuzu came out of their dressing rooms, they didn't see Hada. When they found him at the wedding dress shop with Ai, all three girls made it clear that they didn't like him hanging out with Ai. Eventually, Hada agreed to spend 20 minutes with each girl and help them pick out their swimsuits. On their way home that evening, they ran into Hada's aunt, and after he introduced the girls to them, she asked which of them was his girlfriend. Misuzu stepped forward, but Hada's aunt shocked everyone by saying what Hada and Misuzu had was fake. Hada quickly tried to explain that he and Misuzu's relationship was legitimate, but his aunt suddenly fainted. It turned out that she was just hungry, so after she ate, She passed out on the dining table and Heda placed a blanket over her. Misuzu then suggested they come up with a way to make money for their trip. However, Chua insisted that Heda explain what his aunt meant when she said his relationship with Misuzu was fake. Ai and Himeka also asked for an explanation, causing Heda to panic. Thankfully, Misuzu spoke up and made the girls believe that she also had no idea why his aunt had said such things. They then began suggesting ways in which they could raise the money they needed. Himeka suggested they get part-time jobs, but I said they couldn't do so without the school's permission. Chua's suggestion made no sense whatsoever, and Misuzu's suggestions involved the black market. Heda tried to convince them to pick another activity, but they insisted that they wanted to go to the beach. The next moment, Seiko spoke up from the dinner table and told them there was an easier way for them to go to the beach. She showed them a flyer for a gaming competition being hosted by her company and said that if they entered the contest, they could go to the beach. She told them they could stay at the company's resort during the competition and said the only criteria to join the competition was being in love. She pointed out that Chua, Ai, and Himeka were head over heels in love with Heda, so they were the ideal candidates. All three of them agreed to join the competition, and Misuzu demanded to know why Seiko hadn't bothered to ask her to join. Seiko said it was because she wasn't in love, but Misuzu argued that she was, stating that she wouldn't be dating Heda if that wasn't the case. Seeing as she wasn't ready to back down, Seiko proposed they all take a test to see who loved Heda the most. She pulled up a Love Meter app on her phone and asked them a question that would determine the winner. The question was if they would read a manga their crush recommended to them. Chua said she would read it, and if she didn't like it, she would let him know. Himeka said as long as it was recommended by her crush, she would read it. I'd also said she would read it because it would give her a chance to talk to her crush. Misuzu said would read it and even recommend her favorite manga to him because it was a perfect opportunity to share what she liked with him. Seiko inputted their answers, and after the app analyzed the answers, she told them that I was the winner. Seiko explained that her answers showed how much she loved her crush, which made her freak out and run out of the room. Chua was second because her answer showed that her crush would end up friend-zoning her. Himeka placed third because her answer showed that she needed to spend more time with her crush. Finally, Misuzu placed fourth because her answer had been too perfect, which was a clear indication that she harbored zero feelings for her so-called crush. Misuzu didn't like this, so Seiko said she could prove she was in love by joining the contest, and she agreed. After the girls left, Seiko advised Heda to make up his mind and pick one of the girls before things got out of hand. Heda reminded her that he was in a relationship with Misuzu, but Seiko still refused to accept that their relationship was real. While they were talking, Heda received a text from Misuzu, so he rushed out of the house to meet her. As they walked around, Misuzu told him she didn't like how Seiko could see through their lies. She said it was going to make the others learn the truth about their relationship, and she didn't want that. Heda assured her that would never happen, but Misuzu was skeptical, so she declared that she would win the competition and prove to Seiko that she was truly in love with him. The next day, Heda, Kaoru, and A went out after their classes. They told Kaoru about their trip, and I asked him to text her every day so she could keep up her lie of having a boyfriend. While they were talking, Himeka texted Ai, so Heda asked when they became close. She told him that she liked Himeka because she was a sweet girl, and then proceeded to text her back. When he got home that night, Chua showed him her swimsuit, and while they were talking, I called her. She then bid him goodnight and went to answer the call, but as Heda shut his door, he realized Misuzu was the only one who hadn't gotten closer to the others. Finally, the day of the beach trip arrived, and by the time Chua and Heda got to the bus station, Himeka and A were already there. Misuzu arrived soon after, and the group proceeded to find their bus, but Heda couldn't help but worry that things would go south during the trip. For the duration of the bus ride, Heda and Misuzu put on a happy couples act, hoping to convince girls that they were truly in love. However, the girls didn't buy the act and whispered amongst themselves just how fake the entire interaction was. When they arrived, they dropped their things off at the resort and headed to the beach to spend the rest of the day. Chua and Himeka wasted no time jumping into the water, and as they splashed around in it, Heda told Misuzu they were behaving like children. Ai, who had been searching for seashells, returned just then with a pink one shaped like a heart. She showed it to Heda and asked if he wanted to look for a similar one together with her, but he told her it looked like a piece of fried fish. I got annoyed by his statement, so she insulted him and ran off. This made Misuzu tell Heda that he was nothing but a clueless noob, as the reason I had asked him about the shell had been so painfully obvious. In response, Ada pointed out that all eyes were on her like she was an iPhone 16 display case, and she told him it wasn't her fault that she was irresistible. However, he noticed that she was uncomfortable with the looks she was getting, so he got up and placed a towel over her head to hide her face. Instead of thanking him, Misuzu said he was acting like a lovesick fool, so he reminded her that they were trying to convince the others that their relationship was legit. Misuzu told him she was aware of the fact, but pointed out that the others were all lost in their world and not paying attention to them. Soon after, it was time for lunch, and after they ate, Misuzu asked Ada to prepare dessert. She motioned to a watermelon sitting off to the side and said all he had to do was break and serve it. Ada told her he would pass as he wasn't a fruit ninja, but the others insisted he did it, so he gave in. They blindfolded him and stood at different positions so they could guide him towards the watermelon using their voices. Each girl wanted him to go towards a particular direction, but Misuzu told him not to trust them. She compared the others to sirens who lured unsuspecting men to their demise and asked him to only listen to her voice. The others grumbled, saying Misuzu was nothing but a lying snake, but Ada told them that she was the only one he trusted to lead him to the watermelon. He then asked Misuzu which way he had to go, and after she told him, he began walking towards that direction. As soon as he got closer, she asked him to jump, which he did, and to his surprise, he found himself groping the softest pair of watermelons to ever exist. Instead of letting go of Misuzu's plots, Ada lay in her arms enjoying the feeling of them in his palms. This pissed the others off, so they called him names and made him sit under the scorching sun with the word shameless written boldly on his back. Later that evening, Misuzu asked Ada to replace the light bulbs on the chandelier, while she and the girls handled dinner. Emika and Chiwa went out to buy the remaining ingredients, so Misuzu and I stayed back to cut the vegetables. As they did so, A suddenly got serious and told Misuzu that if she ever found out she was dating Ada to make her other suitors back off, she would never forgive her. She then tried to make Misuzu admit that her hunch was right, but Misuzu didn't take the bait and did something to distract Ai. After dinner, Ada stood outside the bathroom window so he could speak with Misuzu, who was taking a bath. She told him that they needed to step up their game as their ruse was no longer working. She suggested that he casually approach her and give her a kiss in front of everyone, which surprised him. He asked if she was sure she wanted to kiss him in public, and she said yes, since she didn't regard kissing as anything. Sensing his hesitation to agree to her plan, she told him she wouldn't force him to kiss her if he didn't want to. Later on, they'd all gathered in the living room to play cards, but Ada was distracted. His mind kept going back to the plan he and Misuzu cooked up earlier, but before he could execute it, Chiwa announced that she had something to give both of them. She handed each of them a gift bag, and when they opened it, they found matching charms. Chiwa and the others held theirs up and explained that the charms were a representation of their club. This made Ada realize that the girls hadn't been plotting how to break him and Misuzu up as they assumed. When they all went to their rooms, Ada made sure to apologize to Misuzu for not going through with their plan. She told him it didn't matter and admitted that she had been genuinely surprised by the gift. She said that unlike herself, who was cold and calculating, the others were nice, so there was no way she would win the competition. He suggested she withdraw from the competition, but she refused and said she would go through with it. She then went to the wardrobe and pulled out the note he'd made on the day he promised Chiwa he would become a doctor. Taking advantage of his momentary speechlessness, she thanked him for all he'd done for her and told him she would let him go after the trip. The next day, she didn't join them for breakfast, and even when Ada went to knock on her door with a tray of food, she asked him to leave her alone. Later on, he took a walk around the resort and was run over by Mana, who was riding a bike. Both of them were surprised to see each other, and after throwing a few insults here and there, they sat down to talk. Mana asked how her sister was doing, claiming that she wanted to know so she could report back to her father, but Ada saw through her lies. He told her that it was okay to admit that she loved her sister, so Mana explained why Misuzu was the way she was. She said their father liked to show her off to his high society friends because she was beautiful and smart. To remain in her father's good grace, she did everything he asked without question until she lost sight of who she was. However, since she moved to Japan and started hanging out with him, she stopped being their father's puppet. She thanked Ada for slowly returning her sister to normal. He then asked the kind of person she believed deserved to be by Misuzu's side, and Mana revealed that only her partner in crime could bear to stay with her. This made him run to the venue for the competition so he could speak to Misuzu. By the time he arrived, the competition had already begun and Chiwa was the first contestant. Seiko introduced her to the audience and asked what kind of person her crush was, so Chua described him as someone who was too serious. She said all he did was study, but despite that, he was a kind-hearted person who didn't get mad at her whenever she caused him problems. She said she wanted to become a woman who could proudly stand by his side, after which declared that she loved him. The next contestant to be called up was Himeka, but she didn't come out on stage, and just as they began wondering where she was, she suddenly appeared behind Haida. She told him she was scared of going on stage, but he told her that she could do it as she was a proud member of their club. He said this while holding up his phone, which had the charm Chua had given him the previous night. Just then, I rushed on stage and stole the microphone so she could encourage or rather demand that Himeka stop being a wimp and get on stage. Himeka asked Haida how she could stop being scared, and he suggested she say the name of the thing she liked most 10 times. Himeka thanked him and surprised him with a hug, as she told him that her life had changed since she met him. She told him she loved him and said she didn't care if she lost the contest as long as he didn't grow to hate her. Haida hugged her back and assured her that he would never hate her, which made her very happy. The next moment, the audience began clapping and cheering for them. When Haida turned around, he found Seiko standing behind him with a cameraman, filming his interaction with Himeka. The moment Himeka had told him she loved him was being replayed on the big screen, causing him to be labeled a cheater by Ai and Chua. After a few other background characters were called up, it was finally Masuzu's turn, and the moment she walked onto the stage, people began murmuring about her beauty. When she was asked to introduce herself, Masuzu shocked everyone by apologizing and revealing that her relationship with Haida was over. This made the others ask Haida if she was telling the truth, but he ignored them and pushed his way to the front of the crowd. Once there, he screamed at Masuzu, telling her to continue acting, but she demanded to know why he had come. He told her he was there to play the role of her boyfriend and begged her to let them start over. Masuzu told him that he deserves someone better and asked him to focus his attention on the others, since they were the ones who truly cared for him. In response, Haida said he didn't want their feelings because he loved her. His revelation shocked her, but he kept talking and said that they were meant for each other because they were both liars. Overwhelmed, Masuzu began crying and admitted that she always hated him, but recently she wasn't sure what her true feelings were anymore. Haida said it didn't matter and then walked closer to her before kissing her on the mouth. The next morning, Haida awoke to find Masuzu lying on his body, so he asked why she was in his room. Masuzu replied by saying she loved him, and after kissing him, she began wheedling closer to his body like a worm. Their little love bubble was soon disturbed by Seiko, who knocked on the door and asked Haida to come downstairs. She told him that she was worried things between him and the girls would take a wrong turn and advised him to handle the situation properly. After she left, he went to speak to each girl, starting with Himeka, who he told that he wasn't her lover in their past life. He made up another story, but Himeka misinterpreted it and told him she was glad to have met him, after which she hugged him. The next person was Ai, and when she handed him the marriage form, he considered ripping it up. However, he got distracted by her teddy bear, which looked familiar to him, but like most of the things from his childhood, he couldn't recall where he'd seen it before. When I realized this, she began crying like a baby, so Haida tried to give her his handkerchief. In the process, he got cut by the paper he was holding and accidentally smeared his blood where his signature ought to be. As soon as I saw this, she grabbed the paper and rejoiced that he had married her. After leaving Ai's room, he found Chua on the balcony, and after she poured her heart out to him, she kissed him. The kiss had taken Haida by surprise, but he didn't push her away, and when she finally moved away, she told him that she loved him. The next moment, however, Masuzu appeared at the door and told Chua to stop trying to steal her man. Chua wasn't intimidated by her and told her so as the two began an intense staring contest, which made Haida scream. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps, check out this video right here. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.